Hi, welcome to another episode of The Leadership Enigma. In fact, welcome back. Or are you seeing us or listening to us for the first time? If so, welcome. And also check out the new YouTube channel. Now, there might only be a few videos on there at the moment, but we're cranking through over 90 hours of back catalogue episodes. So that's pretty exciting stuff too. Now, come back to me just after this, where I'll be talking to the wonderful Kate Waterfall Hill in relation to really leading a small business, or perhaps being a small consultancy, or even a sole contributor. And how do we actually work with those big monolithic companies, and how do actually you do everything all at once in order to be successful? So many questions, so many conundrums, and as always, I need someone who's far wiser than me. Come back to me just after this.
You're listening to The Leadership Enigma, powered by Transform Performance International, a podcast for the insatiably curious to explore the power of human-centered leadership to create real momentum for positive and sustainable change. Whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts, and disruptors as we discover that success leaves clues. Now, here's your host, Adam Pacifico.
So welcome back, and it's a big warm welcome to Kate. Thank you very much for coming to the studio for the Leadership Enigma. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you.
Now, I gave a little bit of an intro there, which I hope planted the seed in relation to us focusing on small and medium businesses, or people who are in those boutiques or are just starting up or in the highly entrepreneurial space. But just tell us a little bit about your background first.
Well, I'm just actually passionate about business. I've always loved it. My dad used to call board meetings when we had a family get together to decide what we were going to eat for supper or something like that. And it's just in my blood and I love it. And so, 30 years I've been doing this sort of thing, advising small businesses. I ran a sports marketing and PR agency for somebody else. I was the managing director of a company for 15 years. And I've been doing my own thing for 15 years, advising other small businesses. And it lights me up. I just love it.
Now, I know a real focus for you is the leadership piece and working in that environment. So, I mean, this is the Leadership Enigma. What's the passion for the focus on leadership? Why? Why do we bother? But why do you bother?
Oh, because it has such an impact on everybody else. And we spend so much time working. We should try and enjoy it if we can. I mean, it's a bit of a miserable life if you go to work really feeling like you hate it all day.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. I mean, that horrible sicky feeling on a Sunday night's not good, is it? And I think it's partly to do with how the leader shows up. So if the leader's enjoying it and, is passionate about it and has a purpose and knows the purpose of the business and can help the other people in the business understand their purpose and their role within it, then it makes the world go round.
I did a keynote actually on Monday, and it was to 300 leaders. And I love those events. They're great fun. There's lots of energy. And the pressure's on as well in order to try and really engage with people as best you can in that kind of environment. But I want to share with you kind of some of the questions that we were talking about, because I'd love your thoughts on this. We talked a little bit about why is leadership important to their organisation. But why is leadership important to you? Because I also think it's really personal. And I say to people, it's personal to me because I remember, and many people have heard me say this, and I've written about this as well, that my mentor, when I got my first leadership role as a young lawyer, turned around and said to me, the children of the people you lead will know your name. And in what context is up to you. Now, I've got kids, I don't know whether you've got kids, and let's be honest, our kids know our boss's name. So this is personal. So what does leadership mean to you in a really personal way?
I think I could probably sum it up by how I felt when I had my first ever performance appraisal. Do you remember that back in, I don't want to say how long ago, but anyway.
Trust me. I aged myself the other day when I think I said something and someone said, that went out about 20 years ago. And I thought, I've done it again, haven't I? But yeah.
Easily done. But I remember that sort of sense of, anticipation and nervousness about going in to see my boss. And so I was in a PR agency then and had my account director and the managing director doing my appraisal. You can imagine how nervous I was. I was like 23 or something. And they were very kind and funny, and they took the mickey out of me a little bit and told me I was doing a good job and I got a promotion. So it was all fantastic. Okay. But I remember going in there absolutely like, ooh, and coming out thinking, right, I know where I'm going. But I know that other people, and other times I've had appraisals, you don't have that. And you don't get any direction, you don't get any sort of sense that you're important to that person. So I think leadership is so important, because not only are you setting a strategy and you're deciding on the products or services you offer, and you're looking at the finances, you've got lots to do, particularly in a small business, but the impact you have on the lives, as you said, of the people who you work with, not only the team, but also the suppliers and the contractors and the consultants, and your customers, obviously, and your other stakeholders. You have such an influence to make on how that product or service goes, but also how the people feel about it when they're working there. And it's just really important to me.
And there's a massive role modelling piece here, isn't there? Because, like the event on Monday, the CEO opened it, and many people take their lead from their leadership, and it might not just be the CEO, it might be their line manager in itself. And so it really resonated. I go back to our conversation with John Amici, who said leadership is the promise of a lived experience for those around you. And again, I think that's really telling in relation to actually we create an environment which people exist in for the majority of their day. And if that's not an attractive, welcoming, inclusive environment, then that's a pretty crappy experience for people. And we've seen, haven't we, with the pandemic, that people will vote with their feet, and then away they go. But let's talk a little bit about your role at the moment as an independent, and also you've worked in small boutiques. And I've been in this position as well, and I know it's difficult. But tell me a little bit about, because I want listeners to understand we're not always focusing on large corporates, but leadership in all its various guises, in sectors, levels, geographies. We want to have a very eclectic mix. And in fact, you reached out to us. Let me just give some context. You reached out and actually said, could I come in and chat to you about in relation to SME leadership, and when you're small but you're working with the monolithic clients. And I just thought that, I remember that. That's incredibly difficult. So tell us a little bit firstly about what's it like to be in a small boutique or an independent where you're having to do everything all at once.
It's very, very challenging, but very exciting at the same time, because you're in control of it. So, I always sort of say when I'm recruiting people, which I do as well as doing leadership coaching, when I'm recruiting people who've maybe been in a big company, a BT or a Vodafone or something, and I'm recruiting them for a telecoms consultancy, for instance, the difference is that you have the chance to make an impact. You have the agility and the flexibility to make decisions, and then they actually happen. Rather than having to go through, loads and loads of rigmarole that you do with the bigger organisations. So that's sort of, the upside of being in a small organisation is just exhilarating and fun. But you're right, it's juggling. I was going to say juggling plates and spinning balls, but I meant the other way around.
That too. That's probably a good description of it, actually.
Probably feels like that, actually. Yeah. How do you? Anyway. And there's all that sort of stuff. But you're also, probably trying to make macaroni cheese for your 6-year-old at the same time, and everything else. Which is going on. So the whole juggle is a challenge for owners of small businesses, but also leaders in small businesses, to sort of work out what to do next. And my sort of key thing when I'm coaching people is to talk to them about their time and how they spend their time, and be very mindful and intentional about how they spend their time. And what I talk to them about is how they spend time on themselves, to make sure that they are learning and growing and developing, and they've got some sort of support system around them to help them with that. Because if you're not the best version of yourself, then you're not going to be the best version for your team or your family and everybody else. That old thing about the oxygen mask, you've got to wear it first. And then you've got to make sure that you've got time to think strategically, because if you're just in the weeds all the time, then, who knows where you're going? You could be sort of, hoping you're going to Manchester, and before you know where you are, you're going to Leeds, because you haven't looked up and looked at the directions. And just change the strategy according to the economy or the customer demand or whatever it might be. But probably the thing I'm most passionate about is making sure you make time for the team. Because if you've got people around you, whether they're freelancers or team members or suppliers, you're going to have somebody around you. Even if you're a solopreneur, you're going to have, I hate that expression, by the way, but if you are a solo entrepreneur, then you're going to have an accountant, or you're going to have maybe a virtual assistant or something. Everybody you interact with needs to understand what they're there for.
So forgive me, because this is a really important point. How important is it then for someone who is building a business or has a very small team to actually take the time out in their diary to have these conversations and build these relationships, as opposed to just doing and chasing a tail feather?
Well, my view is that if you keep chasing all the time, then, as I say, you lose the direction, but also you could really easily burn out. And the thing with burning out is that, the people say you hit a wall. The wall doesn't tell you it's coming. There's no whistle. There's no sort of alarm bell that sort of says, if you don't, other people will probably see it because they'll see you're tired and maybe a bit cranky and you're not sleeping that well and you're not yourself, but you don't notice it when you're in it because you're so busy.
Yes.
And it seems like, if you're very passionate about your business, it's easy to get sucked into it. But if you don't take time to look after yourself, look after your team, look after the strategy, then, as I say, this wall will hit you right in the face and you won't even know what's hit you, and you'll be out of action, so you'll be no good to anyone.
I think we've seen it play out, haven't we? Even this week, was it the Prime Minister of New Zealand who's just said there's nothing else in the tank?
Yeah.
And actually, in some ways, that's a very brave thing to just say. And we're all human. And if there's nothing in the tank, then you've got to look after number one. Yeah. You've actually got to protect yourself and protect, your family environment as well. So that's a courageous decision, without a doubt. I also say to people, I'm sometimes at events and someone says, well, is this whole leadership thing relevant to me? Because I don't have anyone reporting to me. And here's what I say to them, and then tell me what you think, Kate. So critique me. I always say this is super important because every single day, especially in the current environment with matrix organizations and there's no boundaries and data and internet, and now I do sound like an old fogey, but with everything that's going on, I say to everyone, you are leading. You are inspiring, communicating, galvanizing, and empowering and leading people over which you have absolutely no direct authority. And you're doing it all the time. And actually, you are creating a culture or an experience around you. You are leading. You don't have to have direct reports to be a leader. What are your thoughts when I say that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, everybody is the leader, hopefully, of their own lives.
Yeah.
It
starts with self. It has got to, right?
Absolutely. You're making decisions, again, as I said earlier, about how you spend your time and whether you spend your time, scrolling through social media or you're actually learning something and looking up something that's interesting and useful to you and progressing in your career or in your thinking is a choice. We all have a choice how we spend our time. But even, say, in a social interaction, you go for a dog walk, for instance, and somebody you meet on the dog walk, you smile and say hello to them. They smile and say hello, and it will boost your day and their day at the same time. And in a way, you've had an interaction. I mean, it's not leading, but it's just an interaction. And everything about leadership, comes back to those human interactions. Because even though we've got AI. And we've got, all the internet.
It's the talk of the
things,
town again, right? We had someone only last week, James. I think we were talking about ChatGPT, where and there was a suggestion that we are actually in a significant point in time. Yeah. We're not quite sure where this is going, but something significant is happening, and it will happen very, very quickly. Yeah. So, does it, in some ways, undermine the role of leadership, or I think I'm of the view that it actually doubles down on leadership, that it becomes even more important? Is, again, fair comment? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the whole lockdown and being in COVID has shown that sort of being cut off from other people really did affect lots and lots of people, and so whether we've got artificial intelligence or not, and all the other things that might be happening, we're still human.
We need that connection, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
And the human proximity. Yeah. And I suppose we're all trying to find the balance. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts of, I've been here too, and I know it's difficult when you're a solopreneur or where you're a small boutique, and I've worked in both those environments, but you're actually servicing the biggest organizations on the planet. Yeah. And so it's incredibly exciting to say, my word, we're actually providing products or services to, FTSE 100 or S&P companies. But there's a downside too, isn't there? We're a very, very small cog in the enormous wheel, and then they say to you, yes, we love your work, come in and we'll pay you in 180 days. And you're thinking, I'm a small business. So what are your thoughts in relation to having that opportunity where you're very small and nimble and agile and creative, and you're providing products or services to the super huge? Yeah. What are the tensions there?
Well, I was going to actually touch on the opportunity first, actually, if you don't mind, which is really the expertise that you bring. So you talked about creativity and innovation in that, but what I think the large companies often miss is, because they are so big, is that they can't possibly have specialists in every single area. And the companies I work with routinely are specialists in their field who absolutely know their stuff. They know their stuff. Exactly. And where companies are having to freeze headcount or even make redundancies, sadly, they are looking to these external boutiques and consultancies who are really specialist and really expert in their field to bring that expertise to them. And what's beautiful about it is, of course, they can buy that expertise on a project basis if they need to, or on a retainer basis if they want to.
Yeah.
But they can dial it up and dial it down.
It's
so
easy,
actually,
in and out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so it's brilliant for the big businesses that they've got this expertise they can call on. And then those agencies have this sort of specialist area of knowledge, and they really dig deep into that specialism. And they can go to an organisation and say, in our experience, because we've done what you're asking us to do 5 times already this week, so we really know what the prices should be from your supplier, and we really know how the whole wholesaler should work, and we know what's going on with the legislation. You can't possibly know that as a massive organisation with a team that's being really pressured on every count. So that's the opportunity, and that's what makes it exciting.
And what have you found to be some of the big challenges with the kind of I'm excited, I'm working for this, and then the reality is
it's the slow decision making.
Right.
So sometimes we end up speaking to the right person at the big corporate, and they're really excited about it, but then they've got to go up the chain to get approval.
3 months later,
and then procurement's got to get involved, and so on and so on. So that's the challenge of actually getting the decision made and then getting it moving. But once they've got moving, they tend to stay with us. I mean, certainly the small businesses I work with, they have had these big clients sometimes for decades.
A lot of loyalty there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're doing a good job.
Yeah, I think it's the human connection again, though. I think it's those.
Well, there's the challenge as well. Have you ever had the experience where you're really super connected to someone in the organisation and then they leave?
Yeah.
And actually that was your sole or primary connection, and when they've gone, everyone's like, well, we don't really know you.
Yeah.
Or someone else comes in and says, well, yeah, but I've got my own preferences and suppliers, and then it becomes so. Yeah. That's a challenge as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it can be. So it's very connected to the human piece, but then it's also. It can just dissolve.
Yeah, so that's why I encourage the people not just to have one connection with the organisation, but to try and have multiple connections, so it's sort of digging deep. But the beauty of it as well is that when that person does leave, they quite often take them with them.
Well, so that you're right. There's the yin to the yang. They've gone and it's undermined your relationship, but they say, "Hey, I'm at this new." But then there's a lag, isn't there? Because they've got to have their feet. Yeah. So it could take another 6 to 9 months before that comes up. So there's all of these dynamics going on for anyone who is running a small or medium business, but is playing with the supersized businesses in there as well. Now, I know you've got a bit of a 5-point plan, which we're going to share with listeners and those viewing as well. 5-point plan for anyone, just things to focus on in relation to their ability to not only just run the business, but also look after themselves. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's some people certainly who reach out to me wanting some coaching, is that they find themselves in a situation where they're just not quite. It's not quite right. There's something just not quite working, and they don't know whether it might be because they're working too hard and they just find they're too stressed, or they want to make a change and they don't know what that is, or they're feeling like they're not leading their team very well. Then they feel like they're an inspirational leader that they'd like to be, and I sort of encourage them to sort of say, okay, well, you just need to carve out some time. So the 5-point plan is about acknowledging the need for change is the first bit.
Yep.
Knowing you need to change, and then being open to doing something about it. I
think
so
let me take it through. So as people are listening and watching, so the 5-point plan, and I'm glad you mentioned the word time, because that's the leveler for all of us. I don't care how successful or how much money you've got. No. Guess what? You've still got the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So the first one is be open to change. So help me understand that from a leader of an SME. What do you mean by be open to change?
Well, I think it's quite difficult sometimes when you've started a business. You're passionate about the thing that you make or the service that you offer, and you just sort of go along doing and making it up as you go along, as we talked about earlier, and you just sort of going through the motions. But actually, sometimes you need to stop and go, actually, is that the right thing?
That's hard to do if it's just you, though, right?
Really hard, really hard. And then to acknowledge that actually, the way you've always done it, say you've been in business for 10 or 15 years, might not necessarily be the best way now. I know on your podcast you've talked to a lot of people about culture and purpose and that sort of thing, and it's absolutely key. You can't avoid it.
No, I agree.
That people need to know their purpose, and they want to feel like they're working for an organisation that has a purpose and that they contribute to that. So, to be open to change is to say, actually, do you know what? I might have been doing it like that for the last 10 years, but maybe I need to look at something different now.
It's having the humility to also say, hang on,
That's it.
I'm wise or experienced in X, but actually, am I seeing this right?
Yeah.
And challenging myself, and what am I not seeing that I should be seeing? So, I think and that's good advice to anyone in any business, can I just say, about being open to change. That's for sure. But you also talked about purpose, and that's the second point of the plan, isn't it? Know your purpose. So tell me a little bit about the advice you're giving to people that you're working with.
Yeah. So, are you a vegetarian?
I'm not.
Okay, but imagine you are a vegetarian.
Do I have to? We'll edit that bit out. No, we won't.
Imagine you're a vegetarian.
I am.
I say to you, hi, here's a bacon sandwich. What's your answer?
I'm trying very hard now to actually. Yes, no, I would be. No, that's not for
It's
me.
an easy
it's not
no.
for me, Kate. It's a
As
no.
a vegetarian, it's an easy no. And likewise, if I said to you, I'm hoping you're a law-abiding citizen. If I said to you, I'm fancying robbing a bank next week,
Right.
would you like to come and join
Well,
me?
the ex-police officer in me would probably
Exactly,
advise
that's it, I
you
forgot
that it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Or
It's an easy no.
It's an
right?
easy no.
Okay, so if you know your values, you
Yeah.
know who you are as a person, you know your principles, your really strongly, firmly held beliefs, then you know your boundaries. These decisions are easy. And so, if say one of your values is adventure, and somebody offers you a job where you're stuck behind a desk and you're never going to go anywhere, and you only get 2 weeks holiday because it's in the States, you're just not going to, it's just a no. So if you know what your values are, and that can be as simple as doing just sort of sitting and thinking, actually what really is important to me, or there's lots of values exercises you can do, which I obviously have one that you can do with me.
get hold of Kate, contact Kate immediately.
But there are free apps and things like that you can do.
You don't have to be a
And,
vegetarian either.
No, you don't.
just to say.
You don't. It's not compulsory. I'm not one either. So to know your values is a really good start to finding out what your purpose is.
Okay.
Because if you know your as I say, your beliefs and your purpose, your principles, then you can work out what your purpose is and what you want to do in life. And so many people now are wanting to do much more for their community, or wanting to do things about sustainability, and those things. You can.
This is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you work for a business that you think, that actually doesn't have anything to do with sustainability, they can still make their contribution, and you can go and say to the management, do you know what? I'd like to be a champion of change. Can I be the net zero champion, or whatever it is?
I had this conversation actually on Monday with the 300 leaders, and it's something that Carol Kaufman came on the show, and she talked about her purpose, and I was blown away by just how eloquent and how much she had thought about it. And I'm work in progress. So off the back of that, I've started to think about how would I craft my own personal purpose. And I ask anyone and everyone to do that. And if you need to contact Kate to help, please do. Because you're right, that's the North Star. It's working out what your non-negotiables are. It's much easier, especially in a crisis, to know what you will and won't do. Mm-hmm. And then if you are growing a company as well, your values and your purpose are going to shine through. Yeah. This is the culture of the organisation you're creating as well. But the thing that people need to do is take some time to really sit down and work it out. Yeah. Because I think a lot of leaders still can't verbalise or with clarity what it is.
Absolutely.
Because they think, I'm very extrovert, I'm very this, I think I'm that. But it's a little bit nebulous. Yeah. And actually it needs to be crystallised. Is that also fair to say?
Completely. And if you can't articulate your values really quickly,
yes,
then they're not in you all the time, sort of thing. So when you get asked a question, when you're any sort of leader, but particularly in small businesses, there are so many decisions to make all the time, whether it's, shall we get a coffee machine? Or shall we, open up an office in Germany? Whatever the decision is, if you know your values, it's just much easier to make decisions and know that they are in alignment with that.
More difficult to pressure test, isn't it? I think if you just don't have that.
Yeah.
So no, that's a really strong theme, I think, in all the conversations that I'm having with people on knowing your purpose. Number 3, point 3, you talk about time to think.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story. I was working with a large multinational, where the single biggest change that was made was from the CEO and his ex-con team downwards, was just taking the time to block out their diary to think, because it was back to back to back to back, and as we've heard, busy is the new stupid. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the advice you're giving people about time to think.
I think it's all, with all the things I talk about with time, it's all about habits, and James Clear talks about habits brilliantly, and I won't try and, nick his ideas, but, if you want to know more about habits, read something that he's written.
Okay.
But it's about sort of just being intentional and deliberate and focused on doing, as I say, blocking out time. So if I said to you, do you know, I forgot to brush my teeth this morning. I didn't bother getting dressed. Is it okay if I've come in my pyjamas?
We would have said yes, by the way, just so you know. We're like that. We're completely... Yeah, super relaxed here.
It's because it's a habit. I always do it, and I always take the dog for a walk every morning, even though I had to go in the dark this morning because I was coming here. I still do it anyway. And I think if you just make it a non-negotiable, that you are going to take time to do the things that you need to do. And one of them is, if you're a leader, you do need time to think. You can't be constantly, juggling. What did I say before? Juggling plates and spinning balls. That was it. You can't keep doing that.
No, it's impossible. But I think also, do you find that leaders tend to, in some ways, undervalue time? Because time, I've got to fill time. I've got to be busy. It's this meeting. It's this conference. It's this, and actually, we can't run like that. We're not supercomputers. We actually need time to say, hang on, what's just happened? Absolutely. Reflect, plan, and make decisions that are smart. So.
Well, as I said before, we've all got choices to make, and we've got choice how we spend our time. And one of my clients actually was saying to me the other day that we've got choices how we live our lives, and we think, oh, I've got to do this because I've got to pay the mortgage, or I've got to do this because I don't know, my kids are at private school or whatever it is. But actually, you could undo those choices if you wanted to. They are still your choices. You could go and live in a bedsit if you wanted to, and or live on a beach somewhere.
We're not as stuck as we think we are we? No, we really can.
We get. And
I think as it's actually freezing cold in London, I always think to myself, I could be living somewhere hot, couldn't I? Maybe. I don't know. Oh, no. So time to think, and time is a real theme here. So I move on to point number 4, time to lead.
Yeah.
So again, tell me the advice you're giving people in relation to that.
Nobody wants a boss that tells them how busy they are all the time. They want a boss who'll just sit, put the pen down, close the laptop and look at them in the eye and say, hi, how are you?
The human connection, because that's actually valuing the person.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's just, I'm busy. Yeah. I know, we're coming back to the busy again, aren't we?
Yeah, busy fool. And, I don't believe that anybody gets up in the morning and thinks, how can I be a bit less than average today? How can I sort of, not really put in, what I don't think anybody's deliberate.
Or how can I be a toxic boss today?
Yeah.
People aren't really, well, I doubt, thinking that way.
No, and it's sort of by accident. But I think a lot of team members who are disengaged, demotivated, not putting the effort in, are doing so because they don't get the purpose. They feel that they've been disrespected in some way. They're not feeling listened to. And it's all that sort of, it's amateur psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but my view is that people who behave badly are doing so because they're hurt in some way.
Right.
And so as a leader, if you can spend time with somebody to say, I noticed that you don't seem like you're enjoying your job at the moment, and I wondered, what can we do about that together? What a completely different conversation from saying, why aren't you doing this?
Well, sometimes I talk about is the leader's ability to be vigilant and curious and to pick up on those weak signals. Maybe something's not right, and then to have the time to sit down and say, what's going on right now? Is there anything I can do to help? Or even just sometimes listen. Can't solve, but let me just listen. So that vigilance and curiosity piece, I think, is massive in relation to the focus of this podcast, human-centered leadership. So it's nice that you talk about that time to lead. And again, it's that a former guest also said leadership is energy expensive. You've got to really spend the time leading the people who you're reliant on for the business. Fair comment again?
Absolutely. I mean, they can't be expected to know your expectations if you don't tell them.
No. What's in my head? Go on, guess. Tell me. And then get it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. And then again, we're on the theme of time for the final point, is time for you. Now, let's talk about this in relation to looking after self. Because we talk about leadership in a very simplified way. We talk about leading self, leading others, leading the organisation. But I always say it's got to start with leading yourself. Because if that isn't right, then you're really going to, portray the right or the wrong behaviours. So tell me a little bit about what you mean by time for you.
Well, it's a little bit about the culture as well. So if you are constantly rushing about and running in and out and being all, I'm so stressed, you're demonstrating that you think that's acceptable or in fact even encouraged. So if you can be, I mean, I'm sure you've had bosses before where you've looked at them and you think, wow, they're so calm and they just know what they're doing and they're in control. I want to be like them.
Well, the mirroring takes place.
Yeah, absolutely. And and the boss that's going around like a whirling dervish, you sort of think, oh, okay. Do they know what they're doing?
Or is that what I need to do to be successful?
Absolutely.
That's
it's confusing.
The difficult question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that bit. There's sort of the demonstrating the culture that you want your team to have, but also it's looking after yourself, as you said. So whether that's taking time for yourself, that you're not working 20-hour days, 7 days a week. Or if it means mindfulness and meditation, gratitude. I mean, all these things are so simple and so and free.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the other thing. You don't need to spend loads of money on. I know every time I brush my teeth, whilst I'm brushing my teeth, I'm just going to be thinking calm thoughts about how the day's going to go, and I'm going to be, a leader that has a clear vision, a clear purpose, and time for my people. Fantastic.
It's not a bad setup, is it, for the day?
No.
Really?
No.
So be able to change, know your purpose, time to think, time to lead, and time for you. That all of these. If you're listening to this or watching, indeed, and think to yourself, yeah, I know that. We do a lot of this. We do know, but we're just not being purposeful in relation to. Hang on, but how do I action that? For myself and for my people. Otherwise, it just becomes, as I heard somewhere, shelf development rather as opposed to self-development. How do people connect with you, carry on the conversation, get some more details on this and get some guidance or advice? How do they connect with you, Kate?
Well, as you said earlier, I've got an unusual name, so I'm hoping people will remember.
You have a fantastic name.
Thank you. I inherited the middle one, the Waterfall one, yeah. It's Kate Waterfall Hill. So I'm basically all over social media.
And TikTok,
including TikTok. Yeah, I've just joined TikTok 10 days ago, and it's gone crazy.
You're like a TikTok superstar already in a week.
I'll leave you my autograph, and you can sell it on eBay.
There we go.
So LinkedIn probably is the best place to get
Kate
me.
Waterfall Hill, LinkedIn or Insta, you'll find you there.
Yeah.
Is there a website or URL you want to direct anyone to?
Absolutely, waterfallhill.co.uk.
Simple as that.
And if you want the guide, it's waterfallhill.co.uk/impactful_leadership.
Great. Well, Kate, I'm going to ask you this question. What's the best leadership advice that you've given or received that kind of comes to the front of your thinking?
I would say, don't forget we're all human. And by that I mean you yourself are human and you need looking after, but all the people you interact with are human. So if you can have some compassion and empathy for the humans around you, the world will be a better place.
And however good AI gets, it's never going to take that challenge away, is it? To be really, really human. So, everyone listening, the focus for me is human-centered leadership, and that's not going away anytime soon, is it? Even in this very, very fast-moving world. Kate, you've been an absolute star. Thanks so much for taking the time to come into the studio and have a conversation. I hope you've had fun.
I have loved it.
We've even had James chuckling in the background as well. I could hear that. So
must be good.
Which is good. But thanks so much indeed. Have a great journey.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right.
Thanks.
Join us again next week for more tips and strategies on the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with your host on LinkedIn or visit the dedicated website, www.leadersenigma.com, powered by Transform Performance International, where you can access our exclusive learning, including books, videos, bonus content, assessments, and more. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe on all your major podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.